Hi everyone, it's Shannon and welcome to today's video. So I'm very excited because I'm going to be going over one of the 3 new Hourglass Ambient Lighting Unlocked palettes for holiday 2024. Yes, it's September, but it's holiday 2024. And this is the Lotus Flower. So I'm actually going a little out of order. This is going to be the second video up, but this is the deepest one. And the reason why is I am going to be probably going a little bit more in depth with swatch comparisons for the Evil Eye, which is the medium one and probably the most suited for me. So I'm trying to get the 2 easiest ones out of the way first, and then that one I will probably spend a little bit more time filming. So, but we're gonna do it with this one. This is the deepest one. This is the Lotus Flower, and I actually really like the packaging. The packaging to me was more stunning in person because of the contrast with the blue and the pink, and you know, on camera and in pictures it really doesn't do it justice. So it's just really pretty with the light blue, the pink, the green. And then this is the palette. Now this is a much deeper palette than I believe Snake was last year. So just absolutely stunning. But I'm gonna try and just kind of get through it really quick, kind of give you a little bit of information, show you some swatch comparisons between this and the other 3 palettes. And then I am going to try all 6 shades on my face somehow. Can't really tell you where because this palette's not made for me, but I'm gonna try and see how I can use it and, you know, somewhere on my face. So the little bit about the palette itself, it says symbolic of personal growth and resilience. This Lotus Flower face palette includes 1 best-selling finishing powder and 5 brand new shades of blush, bronzer, and highlighter to diffuse, enhance, and add glow to the complexion. As I did mention, this has, well, I mentioned that it has 5 new shades. So all 3 palettes have 5 new shades. I still think the Dragon has 6 new shades, but they all have at least 5. And this one, now I have already done swatches, but this is the palette. So this palette they're all a little bit different. This palette specifically has 1 finishing powder, which is this one in the top corner, 2 blushes, which are the middle shades, and 2 highlighters, and then 1 bronzer. So this one is actually really nice because the finishing powder and the bronzer are actually kind of similar, and then you have the 2 blushes, and then you have the 2 highlighters, and they're just kind of in columns, which I personally like. But this is the palette, and we'll go ahead and go from the just do the descriptions of the shades. So the one right here is the Ambient Strobe Lighting Powder. This is a new shade. It's the Gilded Strobe Light in Warm Bronze Gold. And then next to it you have one of the Ambient Lighting Blushes. This is a new shade, Desert Flush, and it's a deep beige peach. Then here you have the Ambient Lighting Finishing Powder. This is the existing shade. It's Eternal Light, described as a golden amber. Then on the bottom you have the Ambient Strobe Lighting Powder, so the second highlighter, and this is the Radiant Rose Strobe Light Shimmering. It's a shimmering copper rose. And then in the middle you have the Ambient Lighting Blush. This is a new shade. This is Red Zero. It's a true red, and it's very red. And then this one right here is the Ambient Lighting Bronzer. It's a new bronzer shade. It is just Bronze Heat, and it is a matte deep bronze. So those are the 6 shades of the Lotus Flower palette. And before I get started with putting it on my face, I do want to just do some side-by-side comparisons of the palettes themselves. So here you have the Lotus Flower. So it is, like I said, very deep. And you'll notice that none of these have the marbling, because the marbling I think does make some of the blushes lighter. So none of these shades have the marbling like the other ones. So you'll see here, this is the Dragon palette. Now this is the lightest one. So you'll see in the Dragon palette, it has 1 highlighter and 2 finishing powders. And this one only has 1 finishing powder, but then 2 highlighters. I really wish they had put 3 blushes like in the other one. I think that's what they did last year, but alas, it's 2 highlighters. However, the highlighters are very, very different. So I'm not as upset as I am about the 2 finishing powders in this one. And then we have the Evil Eye, which is the medium one. So you'll see here, this is the medium one. This is the best setup, I think. It has 1 finishing powder, 1 highlighter, 1 bronzer, and 3 blushes. So that is the comparison. So this is the medium, and then this is the deep. And then the only other palette I have is last year's Leopard. Everyone else I've decluttered. So this was a medium palette from last year. So you can see the blushes are quite light. It has a finishing powder, a highlighter, and the 3 blushes and the bronzer. So, but it's much lighter than the Lotus Flower. I did declutter Snake. It was a shade, it was a palette that, just like I will likely declutter this one, even though I'm really loving some of these shades, because it's just not a palette made for me. I pretty much bought it for this video. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's look at some swatches first. Okay, so here are some swatches I did earlier today in Natural Sunlight, and you'll see here, this is from left to right. So you see you have the highlighter, then you have one of the blushes, the peach blush. Then the third shade is actually the finishing powder. So it's a very, very deep finishing powder. Then the fourth shade is one of the highlighters. The fifth shade is that red blush, which is just absolutely stunning. And then the last shade is the bronzer, which is very, very deep. So those are the 6 shades in Natural Sunlight. Now, what I also did is I also did some side-by-side comparisons of all the shades in all the palettes, but by what type they are. So let's take a look. Right here is the swatches of all the finishing powders in the palette. So on the left, you have the 2 finishing powders in the Dragon palette. In the middle, you'll see the finishing powder for the Evil Eye. Obviously, that's the one you barely can see. So that's obviously the one that's made for my skin tone. And then the last one that almost looks like a bronzer on me, that is the finishing powder for this palette, Lotus Flower. Then you have the blushes from all 3 palettes, and I tried to group them together. So on the left-hand side, you have the 2 blushes from the Dragon palette. In the 3 in the middle are the 3 blushes from the Evil Eye. And then on the right-hand side, you have the 2 blushes in this Lotus Flower. And again, they are a Desert Flush, which is a deep beige peach. And then the red, true red is the last shade. So you can see that these 2 blushes are significantly deeper. And then you have the 3 bronzers. The first one is from Dragon, the second one is from Evil's Eye, and then the last one is from Lotus Flower. As you can see, this one is significantly deeper than the other 2. And then finally, the last swatch are the highlighters. So the first swatch is the highlighter from Dragon. The second one is the highlighter from Evil Eye. And then the third and the fourth are the 2 highlighters in this palette, Lotus Flower. And as you can see, they are very, very different. So I cannot use either as a highlighter, but I definitely can use that last shade as something on my eye. I could probably use both on my eye, so it's probably what I'm gonna do. But very, very pretty highlighters. And I love that, while I don't like that there's 2 highlighters in the palette, I do like that they are very different. So those are the swatch comparisons for all 3 palettes. Now let's get to trying on the palette. Okay, so I think I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do. So I think what I'm gonna do is I am going to do the top row on one side of my face and the bottom row on the other half of my face. I am going to use the finishing powder as a bronzer. Again, these shades are not made for me. And then I'm also gonna use the 2 highlighters as eyeshadows, just kind of as single shadows. So that's what I'm gonna try and do, just so you can kind of see how it looks on my skin tone. And again, but some of these palettes, like I remember last year, I almost kept Snake because there was one blush that I absolutely loved, that I loved on the eye, and it was just stunning. So I almost kept it. But I had to be realistic with myself that I loved it, but was I going to reach for it? And in the end was no. So I did declutter it. But some of these palettes sometimes, and this one is actually really, really, that red blush is stunning. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do the first top row, and I'm gonna do the whole half of my face, and then I'll do the second half of my face with this one. So let's start with the blush, and this is the Desert Flush. I am using my Sigma F10, I believe, and I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna try and go a little light. So this is a deep beige peach. Now this one I don't have to be too light-handed, and it's actually pretty nice because I think it's not as deep as the red. The red I'm gonna have to go very, very lightly. This blush is absolutely stunning too. So I really like this blush. I like this more than the blush in the Dragon one. The Dragon one I thought was just a little light. It did build up really nicely, but that is the Desert Flush. That is stunning. I love a good peach blush, and that one is stunning. Okay, next I'm going to use the finishing powder, which is the Eternal Light. It's the Golden Amber. This is the only existing shade, and I am going to use this as a bronzer and see how it actually goes on pretty nicely. You know, again, this is supposed to be a finishing powder, not a bronzer, but it's a pretty nice, really pretty shade too. So I'm just going to do just a regular bronzer like I would any other bronzer. I'm also going to do it as an eyeshadow as well. And just kind of use it as a kind of a transition shade a little bit. I will go in with the other shade, but I'll just do it as a little transition shade so you can see how it goes on. And again, really pretty. It's a finishing powder, so it I don't necessarily have to go heavy-handed because it's supposed to be not translucent, but not really be opaque either. Okay, and next up I am going to be using the Gilded Strobe Light highlighter shade, and I'm going to use it as a eyeshadow because that's totally not going to be a highlighter for me, but it is a really pretty shade, and it actually makes a really pretty eyeshadow. I just put a little bit of the finishing powder as a transition shade and then used this highlighter, but you can see it's so pretty and it's so buttery. And that's what I'll say is I feel like the swatches this year are just swatching, especially the highlighters. I don't know if they changed the formula just a little bit, but I feel like they're just swatching better. So this is the top half. So that's the highlighter as an eyeshadow. And that's the top half of the Lotus Flower palette. Okay, now the fun begins because now I get to do the bottom half, and the bottom half is definitely a lot darker than the top half. So let's see how this goes. But let's start with the blush. Now this is a red blush, and man, it picked up so much. So I'm going to tap this off because I'm going to have to be very, very light-handed of this because otherwise I'm going to look like a clown. But really pretty. It is a gorgeous blush, and I don't even think I need, I don't even need any more. I'll probably have to tone it down a little bit, but man, it picked up a lot of product. Really pretty color though. Okay, so there is the red blush. I did pat a little bit, tried to get it, tone it down, but I didn't cover it with any powder or anything. So really pretty. I mean, really, really pretty blush. It's way too dark for me. I could totally make it work if I wanted to, but you don't see a red blush very much, but this tone is stunning. I'm going to now go in with the actual bronzer, and again, this bronzer is way too dark for me, so I'm going to try and go in very light-handed on this one because it's just, I'm going to look very streaky on this one because it's just way too dark for me. But yeah, okay, yeah, I'm all streaky on this one. So this one I'm gonna have to try and blot it out with a sponge here. Okay, so there's the bronzer, and I'm gonna do the same thing and just kind of go in with a transition shade and do it on my eye. So now as an eyeshadow, I'm sure it's a beautiful color for someone like me, just fair skinned. Well, I'm not fair, I'm probably like light skinned is what. Okay, so there it is as an eyeshadow. And now I'm gonna go in with that highlighter shade, and which I think is stunning, and go in as an eyeshadow. And that is really pretty. So let's go ahead and finish up here. Okay, so here you have it. This is the bottom half. So definitely, if I were sitting at my regular vanity, I could make all of these shades work. But with makeup, you shouldn't have to try and make things work. These shades are beautiful, and I think these highlighters are stunning as eyeshadows. And I remember that from last year. I remember loving the look that it came out with the snake palette. And I actually like this look. I mean, I would have to kind of work with it with the bronzer, but it's really pretty. Those two bronzing and finishing shades as transition shades are stunning. So it's definitely a gorgeous palette. It's just not made for me or someone with fair skin like me. I think if you're medium skin tone, you could definitely make it work. You know, obviously, and darker than that, that's who it's made for. But it's really stunning. The qualities are great. It's a beautiful color, and I think I'm very happy that they did go deeper than they did with Snake last year. Okay, so as I mentioned, I do not have an Snake from last year or any, I think it was Tiger maybe 2 years ago. That was the deeper palette. So you don't have those to compare to. Charlotte Coldcroft did a video, and I believe she did have those palettes, so she did some swatches. So you may want to check her video out. I'll post it up here. But I pulled out a couple of my other face palettes that have similar shades. This first one, I'm not going to swatch anything, but I just wanted to show it to you. This is the Pillow Talk Beautifying Face Palette. This is the light to medium. There was a medium to dark. I did have it, but I since decluttered it because, again, it was too dark for me. That one, I could see like the red shade was very similar. But, you know, so if you have this, maybe you don't need this. I think all of these shades, like all of these palettes except for one is, there's 3 palettes. So this one is, you know, this one doesn't have any swatches, but the medium, there might be some similar shades, but I don't have it anymore. This one right here is also, this is discontinued. You can't get it anymore. This is also from Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Lovegasm palette. So this is the Glowgasm Lovegasm palette. So there's actually quite a few similar shades in here. So, and then the other one I'm gonna just kind of compare to. Now these don't have, this one doesn't have a bronzer, and none of them have finishing powders. That's really kind of exclusive to Hourglass. But this is the NARS Orgasm Foreplay palette. This has a highlighter and 3 blushes. Some of the blushes are actually not too far off. This is still available and it's on sale. I think it's like 30 bucks. So it was limited edition and it's still available though. So I love this palette. It's great. But let's try, let's swatch the 3 highlighters that I think are very similar so that you can kind of see that if you have these palettes and you're trying to convince yourself not to get this, I'm here to help. So here's the one from NARS. Now this is the NARS one I can make work if I go very light-handed. This is the one from the Lovegasm palette. And then this is the one from the Lotus Flower. So you can see the Lotus Flower is definitely a little deeper, but it's very similar to, these two are lighter. These 2 I can make work. This one I can't, but this one is probably closer than the one in the NARS. Now for the other highlighter, this is the one from the Lovegasm palette, and then this is the one from the Lotus Flower. They are very, very similar. I mean, very similar. So, you know, I really liked that shade on my eye, but now I realize I'm like, you know what? I have this and I've used this on my eye before. So, you know, I think that's something to always just remember to check what you have, because you probably, if you have a decent sized collection of makeup, you probably have something similar. And this is the blush in the Lovegasm. And this one, now this one's not going to be like the blush. I don't think it's going to be too similar to the blush because it's a little bit, the other blush is paler and it's a little bit more matte. But again, you're going to get similar looks on the face. And now we'll go ahead and just swatch the 2 bronzers. This is the bronzer from the Lovegasm, and then this is the bronzer from the Lotus Flower. So again, not shade for shade dupes. There's definitely different undertones, but again, if you have this, then you don't need this. You really don't, because it's going to be very, very similar. So again, you can get it if you want, but I'm here to try and help you, talk you out of it if that's what you want. Okay, so my final thoughts on this palette. First of all, I think the packaging is beautiful. I'll be honest though, this is my least favorite. I'm not a big floral person. I mean, I like flowers and stuff, but like in real life, but not in design. My favorite one of the 3 is going to be the dragon, followed by Evil Eye. These are customizable though, so if you wanted to get, if you didn't like this packaging or you liked this packaging, but you wanted one of the other ones, you can do that. The customizable ones though do sell out faster. So just know that, especially if you want, you know, a certain design, that could sell out. So this one, I remember the deepest ones were the last ones to sell out, but I don't remember them ever really going on sale. And if they go on sale, they don't go on sale for more than 20%. I don't have a promo code. I'm trying to get one. I do not have a promo code, but what I did hear is that promo codes aren't working on these at the moment. So they may in the future, but from what I've heard is that people that do have promo codes are not working on these. So I do have an affiliate link below. If you use it, great. It helps my channel, and because I mean, these were expensive. I paid for these. These were $90 a piece. I paid for them. So, but if you don't, that's fine too. I enjoy making these videos. So I think it's beautiful. I'm really happy that they went with some deeper shades. And I think just kind of refreshing my memory, I did watch my swatches from last year. I do think this is different enough from Snake from last year that you would get if you have Snake and it worked for you. I think it's a different enough palette where this one would still work for you if you wanted to get it. I do think that it is different enough. I never got Tiger, so I don't know, but I do think that there's a difference between the two, much more than probably the other two palettes. I do think that they did a really good job, and this red shade is just stunning. Like, I wish I would keep it. I mean, I would just try and make it work. It's just such a beautiful, the two blushes I think are great. They're very different, and I love that all the shades are very different. So this is probably one that I said, if this will work for you, this is a gorgeous palette. This is a gorgeous palette. That's what I would say. So that's pretty much it. Stay tuned. I do have a video on the Dragon palette that is already posted, and then after this one will be the Evil Eye, and I will said that one will probably have more swatches because most of the palettes that I have are kind of in the same shade range. So with that, if you like this video, click like, click and subscribe. That way you get a notification every time I post a new video. Bye everyone.